So I'm making this how-to video on how to still hunt, and I'm methodically working my way through the woods. Since I'm a one-man operation, I'm shooting a scene, then retrieving my camera, then shooting the next scene. I'm in a known doe bedding area, and as I reach a stream, I stop and see just the subtlest movement in the brambles on the other side of the creek. I freeze and I can see the leaves moving in the brambles. And then the doe emerges, but still mostly hidden. I freeze for about 5 minutes watching her. She doesn't have a clue I am there. She's methodically working her way upstream, eating away, and then crosses the water. I can see her reflection in the water beneath a giant log that crosses the stream, and the ripples from her wading, but not her body. I can hear her making her way in my direction. My scent is being pulled from my right to my left, leaving me a shooting lane down the path she is traveling, about a 10-yard shot, and before she hits my scent. And just before she appears in that opening, the woods erupts with snorting and running deer, and she's gone, back across the creek and then downstream.
Here's what happened. This stream really meanders a lot. So I figured she was going to circle around and come back down toward me, feeding. And there was actually a hunter that came in from the opposite direction on the other side of the creek where she originated from. And that was the wind direction. I heard her go back across the creek. And then I heard a deer snort. I don't know if it was her or if it was her fawn or what it was, but I definitely don't think they were blown out of here because it's real thick in here and they have a tendency when they get bumped, I know, in this area just to kind of hunker down. But it's going to take more than a miracle, I think, now to get her.
Now, just like there are certain methods that will up the odds for you to become an effective still hunter and be able to pull back on your bow and release an arrow by stalking a deer, there are certain times that are more preferable to use still hunting, and in some cases, times where it's really ineffective. Let me give you 3 times that I typically use still hunting, and it's incredibly effective. The first one occurs during the early season. In most places in the whitetail range, early season is when you still have foliage on trees and shrubs, and there's a lot of undergrowth that helps to break up your form. Similarly, snows haven't fallen yet, and so grasses haven't been crushed to the ground, and so they're still standing. It gives you the opportunity to stalk deer without them detecting you so easily. Of course, the flip side of that is they're also hidden quite a bit. So what you're looking for in these scenarios in the early season when lots of vegetation is there, you're really looking for deer that are up on their feet perhaps, and they're feeding during the day, or you catch them moving back to their bedding in the morning or getting up from their bedding at night. A second time that's really effective to use still hunting as a tactic, to do the 5-step, is when you have a high wind day. A lot of times people look at the weather, they see they're having a lot of high winds, 15, 20 miles an hour, and they think, man, I don't want to be tossed and turned up in a tree stand in a tree somewhere, so I'm just going to say, forget it, no hunting today. Still hunting can be the answer to that problem. Of course, when it's windy out, deer can't hear nearly as well, and so you essentially knock out one of their senses in still hunting on a windy day. I'd like to mention that oftentimes on windy days, you'll find deer in spots that you won't on non-windy days. And what I mean by that is they will often be bedded in locations out more in the open, even right in the middle of a path sometimes I've seen them. And I figure what's going on here is because they can't hear, they want to use their sense of vision a lot more than they normally would. So if you're the type of person that looks at the weather report and says, it's going to be a windy day, forget it. This may be a great option for you to be able to get out afield and hunt deer. Another time that's really effective to use the 5-step is after a rain or a snow. You know what it's like to be out in a wooded area where leaves have dropped and there hasn't been any rain for a while. It's like walking on potato chips and everything can hear you coming from a mile away. After a rain though, those very same leaves that are pliable absorb the water and they end up softening your sound to the point that you can almost move without making a lot of sound. Still hunting after a rain is especially effective if you're a beginner using this method, because you might not be as precise with your steps, and so you snap a twig or whatever it might be, it goes much more undetected than when you have a dry scenario. The same is true after a fresh snow. Obviously, still hunting can be really effective because you can see where the deer have been. You can actually track them. And it's also something that makes your steps quieter. Of course, after that fresh snow has hardened and perhaps thawed and melted multiple times, it can become really crunchy. So I'm talking about a fresh snow. That is a really good time to go after deer. They're often on their feet. Gives you the opportunity, if you put on some white camo, to sneak up on a deer. Of course, on days when there's next to no wind and when it's been dry for a period of time, it's probably best to stay in a tree stand or set up a blind on the ground so that you're not moving about, because it's really difficult to move in on a deer when they can hear you coming from a long way off. If you've never done it before, I challenge you to start doing the 5-step. Become a still hunter. In many ways, there's perhaps no better way to learn the lay of a piece of land than to still hunt. You get to scout and hunt at the same time. And man, when you sneak up on a deer and you're 20 yards away from it and it hasn't even detected that you're there, there is nothing so thrilling than that, at least in my experience as a deer hunter. Until next time, I'm Darryl Meyer with Seeds to Dreams Deer, and I hope that you find more than you think you're hunting for.